Welcome everyone to this week's IPLD Sync meeting. It's December the 5th, 2022. And as every 2 weeks, we go over the stuff that we've worked on and then discuss any open agenda items. And today I've actually put some agenda items on, so we have things to discuss. But let's start with updates first. So first in my list is Mo.
Yeah. Hey, main thing that's been on my mind lately is the IPLD working group. So we've kind of got a bunch of folks in the ecosystem that are building on top of IPLD that are interested in collaborating. So I think I mentioned this last call or the one before, that we were assembling it. And since then I've done like 8, I think, interviews, maybe 9 with folks. And the goal of that is to figure out what people's IPLD needs are and to kind of set a direction for what the working group is going to work on. So that's progressing. Hopefully I'll have something together end of the month or early January that's synthesized from the interviews. But so far, if you want a sneak peek, it seems that onboarding and documentation is a big deal, clear vision, and also Rust. So yeah, there's a super sneak peek for y'all. Outside of that, I've been doing more stuff with the Prolly trees spec, which I think is important for IPLD-based databases. And so we've got a initial pull request for the spec, and there's still a few like to-dos around how we should configure hash functions for Prolly trees, and some questions around the data structure. A lot of it is bike shedding, but some of it is just like IPLD-ish questions. So if anyone has time to look into that, that would be very much appreciated. If you could, I don't know, give your 2 cents. Yep, but we're hoping to kind of like finalize that as soon as possible so we can submit the milestone for the dev grant so that folks can get paid, and also so that we can start on the next parts, which is making ADL implementation in Go based on the spec. And also, I think I saw there was another dev grant in Rust for IPLD Merkle trees, which is going to be using our spec. So potentially in the next few months, we'll have both Go implementation and Rust implementation. Link to yeah, if you want to link to the spec or to the Rust implementation, you can check out the HackMD notes. But really, if you go on the IPLD repo and search, or IPLD/IPLD, and search for tree in the pull request, you should be able to see it pop up. Yeah, so I think that's about it for me. I'm hoping that I can wrap up some of the more pressing IPLD and Prolly tree things and focus more on URLs towards the end of the month, because there's some interesting stuff to do there around pathing. Cool. That's all I got.
Thanks. Next on my list is Rod.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm furiously typing it out of my brain, all of the things that might be interesting. So it's another one of those weeks where I've had a flurry of little things going on, but some highlights of things that I've done or I've helped or I've merged or I've watched that might be interesting for folks. So we have somebody that's working on Filecoin chain data and using tools in Go and JavaScript to do this. So there was a fix merged into IPLD schema to properly support some of the schema functionality that exists, but was originally introduced to address some issues in the Filecoin chain that we couldn't deal with. So there's a bytes prefix thing in there. So that's working now, which is nice. There's some work going on in the Go HAMPed ADL that was specifically came out of the same effort to read Filecoin chain data with that. It turns out that there's some spec issues there because that implementation has still not been pushed fully over the line, but it's close. There's also some work to get it passing the spec fixtures for our HAMPed, which would be nice. And then we've actually got a HAMP that works between JavaScript and Go and passes the same fixtures. Volker and I are having a discussion in the multi-codec repo about non-cryptographic hash functions. So the multi-hash spec says it's for cryptographic hashes, but there's a good use case for using multi-codec to identify non-cryptographic hash digests or even functions in, who knows how people want to use this. But the concern is that we don't want to see these things show up in CIDs. But yeah, anyway, discussion going on there. Probably find a way to get that in, maybe different name, or maybe we just call it out. This is non-cryptographic. We had someone contribute some IPNS DAG CBOR fixtures to the codec fixtures table, which is neat because I think that came out of Rust, the need for this to work in Rust. Dig is working on, and actually I see Volker's going to have this in his as well. But Dig's working on DAG PV stuff, and so there's a work in progress pull request to unskip some codec fixtures for DAG PV and Rust, which is so good. I'm having an interesting conversation with someone who wants to use our CBOR encoder for JavaScript structured clone support, which is definitely not in scope. This is like you want to take full JavaScript, essentially JavaScript memory objects, and transfer them across domains or across the network or whatever. That's not what IPLD is for, and it's not really what our encoder was designed for. But it's an interesting exercise in extensibility. How hard is it to make this extensible? So if someone wants this functionality with it, then they could get it. I definitely don't think this is a high priority investment, but it's interesting nonetheless. And somebody did a nice table looking at different CBOR encoders and their structured clone support. We come out pretty low, but that's because that's not what we do. And there's another link here in my notes to a pull request on IPLD repo, trying to get the new site launched. So we had someone from the Protocol Labs docs team do an initial pass on getting it converted to a static site generator that they manage across other sites. So that would be nice to have sort of someone else helping to manage it. And it looks really nice so far. There's just a bunch of to-dos left in there. And one of my call outs is that we need to have schema language syntax highlighting, because it really does make a difference. But that shouldn't be too hard. So anyway, list of interesting things people might want to click on and have a look at. That's me. Over to you, Volker.
Thanks. Yeah, I thought I don't have any updates, but there's of course people doing some work that I watch or review or talk to. And Rod already mentioned it, that there is now a PR open for the libIPLD, so the Rust implementation of IPLD, and to make the DAG-PP codec spec compliant, or like hopefully spec compliant, but so it passes all the text fixtures. That's the goal. And basically, I convinced Dig to actually do it, because like he wasn't quite happy about the state, and then I convinced him that it's the best way to do it is just implementing it manually, which he did. So that's great. Yeah. I actually have a question there. There is one fixture. Rod, do you remember that one? There's a fixture about having a DAG-PB fixture, which has a unsigned 64-bit integer or something that might be out of range or something. So I'm not sure if it's supposed
for DAG-PB.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if it's supposed to pass, or like, is it one of them? Like,
if it's out of the signed range, then it doesn't have to pass. I don't think that even passes in Go.
Yeah. So
because
basically,
I was tinkering around with that in Go a month ago to see if I could get that working, and in the end, I just said no. This is not even worth it. It's for the T size field, which never needs to be that big. So, yeah, I would skip that one and not worry about it. Maybe we could even remove it, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like it's clearly skipped, but I was just wondering if it's actually something that anyone supports, or if it's just like
JavaScript does.
Well, because JavaScript doesn't really have numbers.
Well,
only has numbers.
Yeah, I think I don't know whether we probably don't use big ints for that, but yeah.
Like I wouldn't say JavaScript has unsigned 64-bit integers.
That's not fair.
Anyway, okay, so yeah, true, it's big num. Anyway, okay, so it's good to skip it, and perhaps we should because we've also talked about in the past that we should even have like fixtures which are negative ones, which we currently don't have at all. Yeah. Anyway, okay, that's cool. So so currently the PR passes all fixtures except for that one, so that's good then. Cool. Yeah, it will need some other releases of Rust multi-hash and Rust CID, but I'm working on those, so they will happen tomorrow probably. All right. I have someone new on the list. Next one is Bumble Fudge.
Oh, sorry, that's me. No, I was just leaving links here, but there's nothing really to discuss. There's just some very tangential stuff happening at Casa. I mostly just come to these meetings so that I'll learn enough about IPLD to be useful there, but nothing really of interest yet. Just warning you guys that in a month or two, I'll at a future meeting, I'll be like, hey, look at these things that some protocol labs people wrote. Tell me if they're dumb.
Yeah, so I've been watching your work over at the chain agnostic stuff and the CAIP.
Yeah, same stuff, same people, same people.
Yeah, and I did wonder whether there was. So I think I pulled you into a conversation in the multi-codec repo with somebody that was wanting to merge a CAIP similar thing. Did you end up talking to that person? Do you know, or
I just emailed them yesterday and haven't heard back yet because I didn't notice they had dropped an email address into a thread I missed the notification for. But when I finally found it Friday, I think I emailed them. So it's sort of like this thing that keeps happening where people are like, all I need is a binary representation that does A, B, and C. And then they go to and then like, I don't know, because Casa is putting like multi-did is one of them. But I'm also trying to figure out when the multi-format stuff goes to IETF and gets more, well, like, I don't know, whatever. So I have reached out to the guy. I'll report back at the next meeting in 2 weeks. I'm sure by then we will have chatted. It sounded like they, sorry, I don't know his pronouns. So like that person may or may not be willing to just write a quick cape and just use that for their use cases, which might make sense. They're very Ethereum specific. So it might just make more sense to do it as a cape than as a multi-format entry, but I don't know, in 2 weeks I should have more of an update. Sorry for
yeah, I think from my perspective, it'd be good to have folks like you to lean on to understand that world better, because it's not a world that Volker and I spend a lot of time in, and there's a lot of activity happening over there doing that, some of those specs and standards. So when we have people showing up wanting to do novel things regarding chain identification, it'd be good to sort of pull people together and not just have a bunch of different efforts that are doing the same thing essentially. I mean, what we don't want is the multi-codec table to fill up with the same thing duplicated.
Right. Or 20 things that 15 of which no one will use in 20 years.
yeah. I mean, that's bound to happen anyway. But it's like, we don't want to
20 more things.
yeah, that's right. We don't want to gatekeep too heavily, but we want to be sane about these things. So on that same thread, I did forget to put another link in my section, but I put a link now to the message archive for IETF when they're talking about multi-formats. So this was a little while ago, but there is a renewed push to try and get multi-formats. I think it's multi-codec and multi-hash into IETF. This was started years ago, and it's sort of like, let's try and get this happening. And yeah, so if anyone's interested in helping with that, then there's a link.
Well, I have an update there. I actually was texting Manu earlier today. So the plan is the multi-format has so many contributors that I think the idea is a batch email is going out in the next week or two to everyone who has ever PR'd anything into multi-formats, including Volker. So I was actually just filling out a spreadsheet earlier today of all the email addresses I could find for a lot of these people. I need Ziegler's too, so that 100 people will get an email saying, please forward this email to so-and-so address at IETF with a brief message of support for this going from a GitHub repo to an IETF draft or something like that. There's some sort of, I don't know, show of numbers that helps IETF bump it up in the calendar or something. So like at some point, hopefully before the next meeting of this working group, everyone will have gotten an email that says, you know, +1 our request to make this a work item at IETF.
Cool. That's cool.
So I guess the IETF mailing list is open then for people, I guess. Okay, because I should really join because I'm also like totally interested. So yeah, I will.
Okay. Yeah, I think the thing is IETF proceedings are open. All the working groups have open mailing lists. You can just join. But the show of support is like to the editors of the working group to accept it as a work item, I think, if I'm not mixing terminology here. Like I'm really excited to be part of this because I have no IETF experience and I would like to add another SDO notch on my belt. Like I want to know how they do things over there. So I'm signed up to help in whatever project manager organizational capacity. So hopefully when IETF gets this show of support, they say, yay, verily, here's the timeline, work within it.
Is that show of support going to be, is it going to be spamming that list? Like just send an email to that list, or is there
I'm saying no, it's like actually just I was filling out a spreadsheet of everyone who's PR'd in. I think the show of support is like from people that have contributed to it where it already is. So it's like,
right, but what are we being asked? Are we being asked to send an email to that to the IETF?
Oh no, yeah, no, not to the mailing list. So like specific, like 2 or 3 people at the working group that.
Okay,
not
cool.
Yeah. We're not going to ask 100 people to spam 100 times that list.
It may not be supported very well. Yeah.
No.
Okay, cool.
We're all email-based humans here. We have empathy.
Cool, thanks. Yeah. So as we already talked about the multi-codec and stuff. So as Rod mentioned, so we have this basically 2 PRs open for having a hash which is not cryptographic. So we have CRC and we have XX hash, and people want to have it on the multi-codec list, which I think is totally fine because, like, yeah, I agree that hash, like multi-hash itself, basically just having a binary identifier for your hash is just useful in general. So I would totally in favor to add it somehow. So my proposal would be that we just add a new category and just call it hash for now. So basically it's distinctive from multi-hash until we've decided what multi-hash is, or if is it a multi-hash or whatnot. But basically I don't want to block people because, like,
yeah,
also in the past, basically it's so great to see that people see the value of this whole multi-formats. But if we just keep on like refusing adding new things because we are not sure, this is not a good excuse. So if you really have a reason to, and which we do and sometimes have, not merging something, but I think in those cases there's a totally valid use case. I would be in favor of merging them somehow. In case of CRC and XX hash, I might ask them if we want to add all of them, because, like, for example, I've never heard of CRC64 before. Like, I only knew CRC32 so far. So I have no idea if like anyone is using CRC64 or something. So I would basically ask those people, because like I would expect they, like, who did the PRs know what they're doing. So I would basically ask them, does it make sense to add all of those or just one of those, and then do whatever like they think makes sense.
Yeah.
And probably put them in the like at least a 2-byte range, or I think 2-byte range is okay. Or what do you think? What, or should we push them even further? But I think 2 bytes.
No, there's plenty of space in 2-byte, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suggested the same thing, using the label hash, but I can see why that's not ideal as well, because they very likely want to use it as a multi-hash. But if we just have like that is a signal that says this is not ideal for using in a lot of places multi-hash is used for. But maybe this calls for actually putting a note in the multi-hash spec repo and actually calling it out there and saying multi-hash is designed for cryptographic. It can be used for non-cryptographic. Those entries are found with the name label hash, but here's the reasons why you wouldn't want to do that. So maybe that's something we should do.
Yeah, sounds good.
I might make a note of that in those issues actually.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. All right. Okay, thanks. I also should probably put in some notes in what we just discussed. Anyway, I can do this after the meeting. The other thing I want to quickly discuss, or like at least like, so it's not, it's just something that came up when I talked with Dig about the DEG-PB stuff and other things. So Dig is working on IRO, so a new IPFS implementation. And what I found quite interesting is, so he and many others in the past, when we discussed things, were that DEG-CBOR is pretty strict on, like, it's intentionally pretty strict on how you encode things, because the goal for DEG-CBOR was that, or at least also one of my goals was that there's only one way to encode your data. So if your data is in the IPLD data model, there's only one way to encode it. So if two separate parties independently have the same data in the data model and encode it, they end up with the same result. That's like sometimes makes sense. Like in a P2P case where we want to synchronize stuff. So I kind of come from the CouchDB world with replication and things. In this world, it makes sense. Side note is, in the CouchDB days, we tried to define a canonical JSON, which also was not possible. So I can clearly see that people don't want it. So what I discussed with him was that what might make sense is, as there is a use case for being so strict, but there's also other use cases. Perhaps it would make sense to basically have a version of DEG-CBOR which says, well, if you want to have this property of there's only one encoding for your data, this is this strict subset you can use, and it's well-defined, it's specified. But if you don't care about it, you can also do other things, which kind of gets into the direction of the CBOR codec we have today, where you can do arbitrary CBOR. But I think we could also do it in DEG-CBOR. Of course, then a question is like where are the problems, or like where will it fail? Obviously, if you decode the data and you encode it again, it could happen that you end up with a different CID. But again, the question is this an actual problem? Because even if you create it, so usually if you decode something and you encode it again, you probably have modified the data. So you have a different CID anyway. So when then the other party gets the data, it sees a different CID anyway, and it can read it and it can work with it. So basically there's no compatibility problem. It's just a matter of they don't encode to the same thing. And yeah, for me also the question was, is this actually a problem? Or is it just something some added flexibility that people might want to use and make sense. Because if we would do those, one thing which we then could do is, for example, the CBOR ordering, which we currently have in DAG CBOR, is super annoying because it's like from the old RFC where you need a certain ordering, and people should just ignore it, for example, if their use case is not the one you want to really end up with the same CID. So this was kind of the discussion, and I think it makes sense. So I wonder if we, in the future go into this direction or not. So I wonder what others think about it.
So we had this discussion 2 years ago as well. My proposal was at the time, introducing a DAG CBOR strict as a secondary codec, because the ship has already sailed on DAG CBOR, whereby we already have historical data and other codecs that are doing things out of order and non-canonical. I just don't know if people have got the stomach for registering another codec and having that difference, because people have been leaning on that. But there are these cases in systems where you want to do that, and you want to do it on a system by system basis. So you're building a system for content addressing, and this becomes important. And so one path that I was pursuing in both Go and JavaScript, I've still got tickets open actually for this, was to have a mode where you could switch the codec into a strict mode, and it would even verify on decodes, and you could use that in your own isolated system, like outside of, like we need to differentiate between sort of public, like IPFS, DHT, Filecoin, storage stuff, and somebody building a system where they control the data and they want to have these properties. And that does happen where I'm building a system where I'm producing the data and I also consume the same data, and I want to have that control over it. In those cases, you want to give people the tools where they can like turn up strictness. And the main places where it's handy tend to come under the banner of consensus, right? So we have multiple parties that want to have the ability to agree that we have the same data. That's the primary place where this matters. But it also does matter for things like a lot of the things about content addressing, like deduplication and the convergence that you need for like synchronization, efficient synchronization. That stuff you're doing with Couch. You want to be able to synchronize with remotes in an efficient way. So those things do come as well. But most of what we see, I think, comes under the banner of consensus. But there are systems where people want that. But right now, our DAG CBOR is not strict. And if people want to break the rules, they can, because we do very minimal checking on decode. What we don't do is decode non-supported types. But otherwise, if you give us maps that are out of order, or if you give us integers that are encoded as the wrong size or floats, it's not going to complain at you. None of our codecs will.
But like, to me also the question is about should we, so as we already have the CBOR codec, the question is should it be really separate codecs, or does it really make sense to be like not having a strict and another one, but just having, because it's basically, it is compatible data in a way, even if it's strict or not, it's still CBOR, it still has CIDs, it's still compatible. So I would expect that a non-strict, so the non-strict version is a superset, so it can read any strict data. So basically, if your implementation is not strict at all, it can read all the strict data. So why have a separate codec? So I can kind of see the point of having it in one codec and basically just making it kind of like what the CBOR spec is doing. Like the CBOR spec also defines I don't know what they call it. They call it canonical CBOR.
They changed the term. In the original one, it was canonical, and the second one, it was deterministic, I think.
Yeah. So perhaps we should do the same thing and then even be stricter. For example, what I brought up with Rod in a private chat 2 weeks ago was that, for example, we also don't specify how numbers. Oh, actually was DAG JSON, sorry, but same problem. anyway, I don't want to get into this. Okay, so basically, I just want to start a discussion about would it make sense to basically be like, perhaps even I would even call it be more honest in the spec and say we are already not that strict, which we describe in the spec, but just really being more like concrete and say, if you have this use case, do this, else do whatever you like. And then perhaps even what some people want is opening it up for custom tags. Which is but the point is like the nice thing about Seaboard is that the tags, like, you can just ignore them because they are really it still defines the types. And so I think IPLD supports all the lower level Seaboard types. So you can really just strip them off if you like.
There's stuff we don't support, like undefined. Nan, I think we excluded Nan. Yeah.
Oh, and it's true. Okay, that's right.
And there's this class of simple types that we only support a couple of. But then there's these tags that are sort of like out of the box tags that are supposed to be supported that we don't support. That's a can of worms, that is. So I was just googling around for a discussion on DAG Seaboard strict, and I can't find a record of it. All I can find is pull requests from me trying to make people's codecs strict.
Anyway, there's a question in the chat asking what's the demand for those changes. I think, like, in case of IRO, for example, it's just like having more efficient implementations and like not need to be that strict. So especially like when I think about it, it's really like the ordering, for example, like the ordering of the keys is just super annoying.
Yeah. And it is. It's annoying for efficient implementations. You can't stream those things out. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just like something that I would probably also just like, if I would do it from scratch implementation and just like for my own thing, I would probably just break it because like, it's just,
I think, this has come up enough that I think I'd be inclined. No, actually, maybe not. I'm people can break this if they want. There's nothing is going to stop. Nothing is going to. Our systems will support out of order maps. They will support, bad sized numbers. We on decode we allow that, and we have allowed it long enough that that's not going to change. So if IRO were really insistent that they wanted to do different map ordering, and they were comfortable that data didn't need to be convergent with other implementations, I don't think there's anything stopping them from doing that. It's just that there will be surprise when people say, "Hey, I got a different CID. I did the same thing," and that's just lead to a conversation, which is not a bad thing, but.
I think also the reasoning in regards to having a different CID by implementation, I kind of agree with Dig on it that it will be the case anyway. So certainly at one point, different IPFS implementation is if you, for example, add a file, will have different hashes because they just use a different chunker or something. And why not? So I kind of agree that the idea that all implementations result in the same CIDs is just not going to happen. And to me, or like what is important for Dig, which I agree with, is that he still wants to call it DAG Seaboard and also like spec compliant. And I wonder if you could like basically change the spec to make those things spec compliant, because I think they're useful, and I don't like it's the whole convergence story, and that I think is a great idea, but I've also, in terms of CouchDB, also not see it working out. And I don't see it work, and I really had high hopes that it works out with IPLD. But to me, it seems also not the case. And it's just like, why bother with it? Like, we can still specify the strict thing, and people can use it. And people, like, for example, like I would say users like the FVM, for example, they really need to make sure that basically you encode it and it is exact those bytes. They will use a strict subset. But other people, if I build my peer-to-peer bingo app that I want to build already for a few months, I just don't care. Like, it doesn't matter. If someone gets the data out of this, my bingo app, and uses it for, I don't know, like something else, and re-encodes them, and they have different CIDs, it just doesn't matter.
Well, it does matter in some places. Like, that's the thing. It does matter on a case-by-case basis. And
but should we prevent those other cases by being super strict about, like, basically, do we want to serve all cases or like those two big cases, or do we just want to serve the content address? It ends up in the same CID.
Yeah, I think my default position for now is simply, I'm just looking at the spec and it does say must. Maybe it doesn't have to say must. Maybe it could be a should. DAG-CBOR represents, in the current state of DAG-CBOR, represents our attempt to get close to having a codec that was deterministic and stable. But it's clear that there's been too much flexibility up to this point, whereby that's an unrealistic goal, and also some of the design decisions in DAG-CBOR make it unideal. Like the map ordering thing has come up again and again. So maybe we just need to accept that. There has been a couple of efforts to make a new codec whereby there is only one way. It's not just that the spec says there's only one way, but the codec is defined in such a way as there's only one way to do it. Like Michael's, was it ZDAG or SimpleDAG? One of those two, or maybe it was both of them. They were designed so that there was just one way to encode data, and that would maybe that we need to think about pursuing that, where for people who have a system where they really need strict determinism, that we have a codec that is always going to be deterministic, and we can say, well, DAG-CBOR tries to be, but it regularly fails. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't like that answer.
It could be like, could be a way. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to bring it up as a general, because I had discussion, and so I basically didn't expect any fixed outcome, but yeah, cool.
Do you want to put some notes in the doc about?
Yeah, I probably should.
Record that so that when we're Googling for this in the future, we have it.
Yeah, I'm so, yeah.
If you can, maybe I'll make some notes if you got to get up to bed, don't you? So.
Yeah, so I would have, like, I can add the notes for the non-cryptographic hash. So it would be great if you add the strictness ones and I add the cryptographic hash ones, which are pretty short. Okay, thanks. All right. Anything else people want to discuss or have on their minds? I also need to check the live stream. Okay, I think we are. I just saw in the chat some emoji which isn't supported by my system, obviously. So I just see a rectangle.
It's a shrugging person emoji.
Okay, thanks. I see a female rectangle. That's funny. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So I don't see. Yeah, it's better. So I see like. Okay. So yeah, thanks everyone for attending. And so I guess I probably won't be here in 2 weeks, but I hope others will be. So I guess this group meets again in 2 weeks, same time. And yeah, thanks everyone for attending. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Oh, and feel free to stay on for the after party if you feel like.